Pokemon world and our world are really not that different. Sure, their animals can breathe fire, read minds and destroy all life itself, but when looking at their behavior in the wild, you'll find plenty that are just trying to get by, just like animals in our world. Some species hunt, some species fall prey, some work together and some hate each other. Each has their own place in the ecosystem. Today, I want to take a look at these relationships and show you how much interesting information is hidden here. I mean, we all know Zangoose and Viper can't stand each other. And you might also know they'll attack each other during horde battles in Gen 6. But there are a lot of similar cases that are way less well known. For example, over in Alola there is a fierce rivalry between the native Vikavolt, Pinsir and Heracross, with the latter two teaming up against the electric bug, as mentioned in the Pokédex. This is undoubtedly a reference to the position of beetles, the insects the three are all based on in Japanese culture. Insect fighting is a relatively common hobby in Japan, where beetles are used as fighters. This has made it a thing in popular culture for beetles to be seen as heroic and strong. For this reason, plenty of kids shows use beetle or insect themes for their heroic characters, most famously Kamen Rider. Stag and Hercules beetles, which respectively Pinsir and Heracross are based on, are seen as a bit of rivals in insect fighting, explaining why the Pokemon have effectively become counterparts over the years. Vikavolt is also based on a beetle, but its design has more influences than that, such as a ray gun and a fighter jet. It results in a design that I think is fair to say looks a tad more evil than Pinsir and Heracross, even if it isn't the dark type. As such, Pinsir and Heracross teaming up to fight it is most likely meant to mirror two rivals setting their differences aside to team up against a common evil. But since we do not look at insects the same way they do in Japan, this is very easy to miss for Western players. Not too far from this spectacle, in the many flower fields of Alola, Cutiefly live a difficult life. Seeing as it's one of the smallest Pokemon in existence, that maybe shouldn't be a big surprise. But while fellow tiny Joltik just sticks to Yamper's butt to feed off electricity, Cutiefly are constantly targeted by predators like Spinarak and even Pineco. Yeah, I didn't take Pineco for a predator, but it really is. The Pokédex mentions it doesn't really do anything in particular to lure them in though, they just hang there and wait patiently. As if all that danger wasn't bad enough, Cutiefly also has to deal with the much larger Butterfree, which are after the same pollen as Cutiefly is. These can be from actual flowers, noted to be in the same kind of fields where Fomantis hides away, but Cutiefly and thus presumably Butterfree as well, also target Gossifleur, which grow flowers on their head that presumably also create pollen. Another Alolan Pokemon that's often on the losing end of the food chain is Wishiwashi. While twice as big as Cutiefly, individual Wishiwashi are only 20 centimeters or 8 inches, making them an easy prey for larger aquatic Pokemon. Dewgong, Wingull, Pelipper, Wilmer and Wailord are all said to eat Wishiwashi in varying numbers. However, that doesn't mean these Pokemon are on top of the food chain, quite the contrary. Wingull often fell prey to Talonflame and Barraskewda, while Wilmer is said to require Wailord for protection against Sharpedo attacks. Both whale Pokemon fall prey to Dhelmise though. And while these are predator-prey relationships you can kind of understand, where the larger Pokemon eats the small one, there are also some that are a lot stranger on the surface. For example, when you'd ask me what Pokemon could be prey for Lantern and Luminion, I would go through a lot of small fish-based Pokemon before I'd ever end up on the actual answer: Starmie. Fortunately, Starmie's limbs regrow when removed, something that also ties into the origins of the gem in the middle of their body. Want to learn more about that? Check out my video on held items on wild Pokemon. Anyway, it seems like things aren't all peaceful at the garbage dump either, because while I would think the few trash-based Pokemon the series has produced would at least be able to live in harmony, that isn't the case. Both Trubbish and Garbodor are hunted by Alolan Grimeram Muk, to the point their numbers in the region have been dwindling. Their Cantonian counterparts have been said to eat trash since the early days, but I didn't think they'd take it so literally. A more humorous yet surprising predator-prey relationship is Salandit and Spinda. Salandit hunt using poisonous gas, which overwhelms and weakens their target. Well, almost every target. Because while most prey are sent reeling, Spinda is already reeling by design, which means Salandit's gas doesn't work and the fire types are usually unsuccessful in their hunts. Another interesting circle of life can be found in the deserts of several Pokémon regions. Here, a particularly painful dex entry informs that while they are crying for their deceased mother, Cubone only attract their natural predators, Mandibuzz. These flying types build nests out of Cubone's bones, which is morbid in and of itself, but the tables will eventually turn. Marowak, filled with rage against the practices of Mandibuzz, boomeranged them out of the sky. And this isn't even out of biological reasons, this is purely out of revenge for what has happened to their fallen comrades. But it isn't all death in the Pokémon world. Plenty of Pokémon coexist without chomping each other's head off, like Diglett and Dunsparce for example, which kindly share their tunnels, often provided by digging onyx. Hypno and Alola don't feed on the dreams of humans like other members of their species do, but instead get everything they need only from Komala. As I'm sure you're aware, Komala basically sleep their entire life, so that figures. While Behem are said to kidnap the Dubwool of the Galar region, nothing is said about a possible reason why. And that is undoubtedly because the same applies to the inspiration of this practice. Stories of UFOs and aliens abducting cattle from farms to, well, we don't know. Presumably research, but who knows? Maybe the aliens are just intelligent sheep taking their lost sons back. Intense rivalries can form over more than just food, however. Cantonian Meowth and Murkrow are both obsessed with shiny objects and keep entire stashes of them. They can commonly be found raiding each other's treasure troves, but there are a lot more Pokémon species involved in this web, such as Wimpod, which occasionally collects coins it finds on the ground, only to find themselves chased by Meowth and Murkrow, desperate for even the tiniest shiny object. Gabite also collects specifically shiny jewels, but since they live deep in caves, they are only the target of Murkrow heists and don't partake in that themselves. Instead, Gabite are too occupied with their own rival, Sableye, which also have a fondness for gemstones and do reside in the same cave environment. For this reason, they both target Carbink, quite literally the jewel Pokémon, although Gabite more often than not ends up the victor. Another fun little fact that came up when looking at Meowth is that two of its evolutions, Cantonian Persian and Berserker, strongly dislike each other, with one being elegant and sophisticated, while the other is wild and barbaric. While that is understandable in and of itself, it is incredibly uncommon for two Pokémon of the same evolution family to dislike each other. I can't think of another example of that. When I say evolution family, we of course all think of Pokémon that share an evolutionary connection. But in real life, evolution families are much more about related species that have evolved over the course of millions of years. We as humans are part of the same evolutionary family as apes, for example, but we have since gone different ways. This also exists in the Pokémon world, although an official term doesn't exist now that evolution family is already taken. For example, Drowsy and Mana, both psychic tapirs based on the Japanese Baku, are distant relatives. The same applies to Toxicroak and Seismitoad, both frogs, Sotodle and Wilmer, both whales, and Pachirisu and Pikachu, both electric mice. In fact, that last one suggests all Pika clones may be related, but that is not confirmed. What their shared ancestor may have originally looked like, we don't know in any of these cases. But there is one specific case where we actually do know. And I'm not talking about the rumored Kabutops-Genesect relationship, this one is actually confirmed. Omastar is an ancient ancestor of Octillery. Their fellow mollusks, Shellos and Shelder, also share ancestors, which is interesting since they at first sight don't really resemble the same creature. And speaking of Shelder, they tie into the final little factoid of this video. Just like real-life oysters and clams, Shelders contain pearls, referenced in the fact they can hold them as held items. But compared to Clam Pearl, these pearls are actually of a lower quality and not remotely worth as much. Not in-game FYI, only in the Pokédex. That may also be why Spoink only carries Clam Pearl pearls on their head and not Shelders. And that's all for today. If you learned something new or have your own theories about wild Pokémon behavior, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Pokémon content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.